Will introduce myself. So this is being recorded. Just want to make sure everyone is muted in case you have background noise. Also, regarding this recording, the only thing that is shown is my screen, so that just in case you were curious, that your face would pop up on the recording. It will not. My name's Anita Thompson. I own Art Venture Workshops, and I create programs mostly for libraries. I have 20 different libraries that I create programs for, both virtually and in person. So, as Lisa said, thank you so much. I have a newsletter, a weekly newsletter that comes out every week. So if you're interested, I will share my email with you at the end. So we are going to be creating a mixed media bird collage this evening. And so I have all of the supplies listed in the chat. If you have any questions, let me know. But we are going to be starting first with our background. Oh, I also forgot to add in there a paragraph from a magazine or a book. As far as pages, I forgot to add that to the list of supplies on the chat here. So if you have magazine, newspaper, even an old book that you're not reading, obviously, and they're okay with cutting it, you can do that as well. So I actually taught this class for the first time on Monday evening, and I just wanted to show you the difference. So this was my sample for the libraries. And then when I did it with the class Monday evening, I started experimenting. So first of all, your bird does not have to look anything like mine. We had some really interesting and fun sort of creations that I'll share in my newsletter for those that are subscribed. Different things like taking a large word from a magazine and making it, gluing it on. We had some poetry pages that were also used as the background. So just kind of giving you some inspiration here. Our bird is on a tree. I added sort of some clouds here that was not in my original. So anything that you want to add to this, be creative and be inspired. So with that, we're going to start off with our page first. So basically, this is our 5.5 by 8.5 piece of paper. We're going to hold it landscape mode. So not this way, but this way. And we're going to put aside our bird paper for now. I'm using the same paper for that, but you can use any piece of paper that is, that will hold up to oil pastels. The other thing is, if by chance you don't have oil pastels, and if you have crayons, if you've got kiddos and you have crayons available, you can use those as well. All right, so I'm going to keep this up here and move my blank piece of paper down. And so we're going to need our, basically, we're going to be needing our pages of our magazine or book. And so basically what we're going to be doing is, first we're going to be ripping the pieces and arranging them on here. And then we will be adding watercolor. So for instance, if I can show you this one, we'll start adding the tree. And then also, if you feel so inclined to add color to your background, I decided to do a sky on this one. I didn't do so much on the original, but again, I was inspired once we started doing the collage. So, and then while that's drying, we will then move it over to dry, and we will start our bird on the other piece of paper. So let's get started here with grabbing our magazine pages, anything that you want for the background. So I have some previously from Monday evening, since I mentioned, I had taught this class there online with another library. So I'm going to start arranging it and then gluing it down. And so again, if you're interested in a certain, maybe a certain paragraph or a word, I'm using sort of an old book and I wasn't really thinking about the words, but that's what's so great about sharing these sort of ideas with other people, because they have a lot more ideas than I could ever come up with. For instance, one of the participants, she's creating this for her daughter, and I think it's her daughter's favorite book um, as a child was The Little Prince. So she actually, I don't know if she ripped up the book or photocopied parts of it. She took it and used paragraphs from that book, and then she also started drawing in stars for the background on a separate piece of paper. Or I think she actually used some of the paper from the books in the blank spaces. So that's another option. You can draw some things to cut out and paste on your background as well. So sky is the limit. So now we're going to start sort of arranging these. The other thing is that you may need your scissors at this point for when your pages are kind of, going above your border for your paper. So just depends. So I'm just kind of arranging here. The other thing that you could do, you could definitely leave blank spaces available if you want on your paper. That's another option. And then again, just to show you on the other one I created, I started to think about clouds, and I used the margins because there was no text on them. And I cut those, kind of creating clouds. I cut and ripped those. So, okay, so let's get cutting and ripping. And then we can start gluing. You could also create even some shapes. As I mentioned, we had some cloud-like shapes. So you could do that too. I think I kind of like that idea. So I'm going to kind of rip some of the white space, which is the margins in this book, to use again as sort of some white space and clouds. Now, if you have an idea already of where you'd like to place these and you're pretty certain, you can start gluing everything down. You can also make this look, it doesn't have to be completely flat. You can also start to create some more texture by layering some of these pieces. I didn't really do that, but it's an option. So, okay. And then again, after we have this glued down, we're going to create our background by adding a tree and a tree branch for our bird to sit on, or I should say perch on. I guess birds don't really sit on branches. They kind of perch. The other thing is, I think I mentioned this, but I'll mention it again. Your bird doesn't have to look like mine. If you have a specific bird in mind, like maybe you like a cardinal or a bluebird, you're not even sure. I sort of created my bird. My bird doesn't really exist. At least I don't think it does. It might, and I'm just not aware of it. I pretty much used a lot of the colors of the rainbow for my bird. I wanted him to be colorful. So he's sort of a made up bird. So what I'll do is when we are drawing our bird, I will supply, the basic template of a bird. And if you want to use your creativity, go from there, you are welcome to do that. You're also welcome to copy my bird, either way. You can also add 2 birds if you like. I'm trying to think if I had anybody do that Monday night. I don't think so. I mentioned that possibility, but I think everyone pretty much liked the idea of just the one bird hanging out. This is a great time of year. I know when I wake up in the morning, we have a few sort of smaller trees and bushes outside of our townhouse, and I'm definitely hearing the birds early in the morning. I wonder if anybody else is too. It's really a nice, sort of a nice thing, especially, it gives us hope that the summer is coming and spring is pretty much getting to full bloom, despite the strange, I feel like we've had such strange weather, lots of flooding and crazy winds. I was just talking about this with somebody. I don't ever remember having so much wind um, in the last few years. But again, the birds and the beautiful weather today are definitely a nice introduction into our spring. Oh, let's see. I think somebody just joined. Yes. Welcome, Jan. We are just starting our. Hi.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, no worries. No worries at all. We are just starting the background for our collage, and I'm just recopying the supply list in the chat.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome. So I'm just going to put you on mute, Jen, just because we are recording.
Mhm.
Okay. So what we're doing right now is we are applying cut pages of a book or magazine, newspaper, any kind of text for our collage. And then we're going to be using watercolor to give it some color and also, excuse me, to add a tree. The other thing I did in order to make my tree a little more tree-like is I also continued to rip sort of blank pieces of my book here. Oh, I love it. Ani was telling me about she had some birds chirping at 5:30 or 6:30 and it signals her two cat. Yeah, I can see, Ani, where that would be a definite issue. That's funny. Or probably not so funny to you at 5:30 in the morning. Oh. So what I'm doing here is I did this on Monday too. I decided to actually kind of create my trees a little more using some of the ripped pages or in the margins of the book that I'm cutting. I decided to sort of make a little bit of a tree so that I can paint it. Now, you don't have to do that. You could still paint over your text because I did that in my original. I just came up with this Monday night and thought I'm gonna kind of recreate that because I like that idea, but it's not necessary. And I'm hoping that this is very cathartic for you. That it's, this is one of, I think, sort of one of my more relaxing programs where you don't have to think too much, I think. So enjoy being creative. Not that you're not creative when you're following a directed drawing, but this gives you a little more freedom, I think. So we've also talked about, for those that just kind of came on, we've talked about even the addition of a single word or two, um, to be emphasized if you find it in your paper cutting. You could also create the word. I didn't think about that. You could take, a marker or um, I guess you could even use your oil pastels to create some words that you want. Let's see. I'm going to make this a little bit thicker here. Go right here. Also, we also had some participants that decided to leave some of the white space available on their paper. So another option. So I'm also designing programs for the fall right now too. I'm finishing up summer programming and also always looking forward, as anybody knows who's a teacher or anything that you have to do that's, kind of forward thinking. So expect some more collage work coming up. I feel like this is a forgiving medium, and at the same time you can be very very creative with it, and incorporate mixed media things with drawing, painting. So I like that aspect of it. And if anybody has any ideas that they would like to see, um, either in summer or fall, I invite you to, you can private message me, you can email me, and I listen to all of your suggestions and create programs based on those as well. Okay, so I think I'm almost ready to start painting, but adding a lot more white space in this one. And some more cut paper. So we shall see what it turns out like. Okay, so move my papers aside here. All right. And so now I will start the background using the watercolor. So I'm going to bring that into view so that you can see the start of that. Don't worry that you are still working on your on the background. Um, this isn't a directed drawing as much until we get to the bird. So you can still have some time here. And even then, I will keep what I'll do is I will keep a template of the bird drawing up so you can see it after I demonstrate it. All right, so I'm going to go in here using some brown, yellow, and possibly a little bit of black for, down the left side to create the tree. And what I did on Monday night's call is I actually also started to use, after it was dry, I started to go back with the oil pastels. So I'm just kind of showing that now to create some more variety and more texture. So I think I actually like this sample better than my original. Okay.
Can't get to my paintbrushes with you there. Can't get to my paint.
Okay. So I'm starting to add those colors on. Again, I'm using some very lightly brushed watercolor. You don't have to use a whole lot of water because you want to make sure that it dries. And it's also sort of like we're staining the paper, especially because we're not using watercolor paper for, the watercolor background. So you want to make sure that you're not really soaking the background. You're doing just enough that you're getting color on there. The other thing you can do, if you want to get some texture with your brush, is you wet your brush, but you also kind of let the color run out on the brush and swipe it back and forth, and you'll kind of get this. Let me see if I didn't really do it here. There, I'm kind of getting a little bit of texture there from letting the color run out. And again, you can add more texture using the oil pastels on top of the watercolor. So lots of different options. We just have to make sure that it's dry. And then I'm kind of going to go in now and start to create some branches or twigs coming from our tree. And you can make the tree a lot thicker than I did if you want. Um, feel free. I might make this one a little bit thicker now that I've said that. And again, I'm using a combination of brown, orange, and black, depending on, what your watercolors are. Okay, so this is my tree so far. And now I'm going to think about my background. And so I'm going to start off with some blue. And for this one, I kind of might do a darker blue. So I'm going to mix some purple into it. Sort of like an ethereal background here. Maybe a little bit darker here. You know, and here again, you just want to make sure that you're not soaking the paper so much. You want to make sure that it dries in between when we create or put it aside for when we create our bird. Let's see here. You know, the really cool thing about ripping paper and using it is that obviously when you start to paint, the edges of the paper get stained, and it also adds to the texture. Okay. So I'm also going to think about maybe adding some clouds, but I need to wait a little bit because I've wet this. So I'm going to put this kind of aside for now. Now, again, don't worry that you are not at the same spot as I am as far as creating your collage. But I'm going to just move my other piece of paper over and draw a template of a bird so that you can look off of. As a matter of fact, I'm going to get another piece of paper, as I mentioned, so that I can keep it up as a blank template for you to look off of. So excuse me as I move off to the right here. Paper. Okay, so just drawing a template of a bird here. Basic outline. And in this, I like his tail to kind of go off and break the border. So I make him a little bit longer. And basically, if you want to do that, it's just going to depend on how big your bird is. Like I said, I'm just drawing kind of a template here for you to kind of look at. We'll add some of his wing here. It's very basic shapes. And then, of course, I only drew one of his kind of legs, but you can draw the other one in the distance. Obviously, this is something we're going to be cutting out, so you want to make sure that it's thick enough that you can cut around. And let's see, here's his basic eye. He looks a little creepy, but you can make him look cute. So I'm gonna just make this a little darker. This is just kind of your outline to create your bird. You can add more details, and we will be adding more details as we get to the coloring part of it. So I'm going to start my bird here. but I'm going to leave this one up above so you can look off of it. And I'm also just going to make sure that my bird is going to be big enough for my paper here. All right, so I'm going to create, I am going to create him this way. And like I said, you know, the other thing you could do, I just thought of this, you can make a bird's nest too with eggs in it. That would be kind of cool. Nobody's done that, but I was just thinking of that idea just now. So that's another option. He's a little smaller than my other bird, but yeah, I will make a bird's nest as well. This is the fun part. You get to be creative. So I'm now starting to make more details on my bird. Make his head a little bit bigger. And oh, there's my eraser. Okay, so I'm starting to make some more details. I'm going to make his beak a little bit longer. I'm going to start sort of creating his main feathers here. Especially for his tail, and then a little bit more for his wing area. So when you're thinking about all of this, you want to think of basic shapes. Like for instance, you know, I've made his wing look almost like if you were drawing like a football shaped eyeball, you know, because eyeballs are sort of football shaped. So I'm kind of thinking, you know, what would his wing kind of look like? I've also decided that this wing, it's going to look like his wing is a little bit looking like he's about to take off. So, and then I'm going to start adding the feathers here. See if you can, yeah, you can see this on Zoom. I was going to say, I couldn't tell if you could see the details because I'm doing it a little bit lighter of these feathers as compared to my previous samples, but I'm kind of drawing layered feathers here. I didn't go into that much detail with my other samples, but I thought this might look kind of interesting for this bird. So now I'm just starting to focus on some of the details that I want.
Sorry.
So, uh-huh. Oh, did anybody have a question? You can also put it in the chat if you have a question. Okay, so I'm also going to add some little details like over here. I'm not making him super realistic. So, which is why I added some textural details here, basically looking like these are, they almost look like waves. And I think I want to draw him just a little bit longer here. So I'm going to move his feathers down a bit and his belly down. There we go. And then finally his feet. Okay, so I'm going to start with the colors. I used a lot of yellow in this. So again, you know, you can use any colors you want. Maybe you want a bluebird. Maybe you want, um, you know, a red and orange bird or more like a green. I did a combination. So this is where you can think, what do I want to, you know, what do I want to do with the colors? I recommend lightening up your pencil first. By that, I mean, I'm just lightly going over my pencil lines. And I'm not erasing them completely, but you can see on the screen that they're getting lighter. That way the pencil doesn't smudge as much with the oil pastels. The other thing that you can do is if you have some Q-tips, you can basically shade a bit. So if you have any of those in the house, or you have some tissue, you know, a tissue or something to kind of blend, you can do that as well. I applied these very heavy, the oil pastels, but at first I started doing sort of a blending thing, and I'll kind of just show you a little bit of what I mean. So I'm gonna make him very yellow at first, lots of yellow. And then I'm going to take my Q-tip and I'm just going to smooth it out like so. And I'm going to kind of do that for the rest of him. Now, again, I didn't do this for my original, but Monday night started experimenting a little more and thought, what can I blend it with? You know, you could also use your fingers. It's pretty messy, but if you're okay with that, go for it. I just had this conversation with somebody the other day as well. I was so I was one of those kids that was always drawing. I knew pretty much early on that I wanted to do something in art, although I also said I wanted to be a ballerina, and I never even took ballet lessons, so I don't know what that was about. Um, but I stuck with the art, and basically, I used to draw everything and experiment, and I think it's kind of nice as we get older to continue doing that when we have the time. So my version of that was discovering that I could use Q-tips to make this sort of blended. So that's my first layer here. And then I'm going to start getting darker and laying it on a little thicker. So I'm still going back in with my yellow, but now I'm going to start to add in some green around the eyes and the face. And then I'm going to blend that a little bit too. Now, again, you don't have to. You can just go in and, make it kind of chunky like I originally did. But I sort of like a little bit of a blended look at first. So I'm now starting to go in with my green to add some color and texture. I'm always really excited to see what everybody's looks like at the end, especially with projects like this that are a little more self-directed, because they just look so unique and different. Again, I'm just kind of applying the second layer. I'm also just checking on my other piece here to make sure it's drying, and it is. If for whatever reason, if you were a little heavy on the water and you have a hair dryer, you could always sort of apply that to this. But they should be, starting to dry. It's a little wet. Anyway, back to the bird here. Really starting now to apply more color to the wings and the rest of him, trying to figure out what colors I want for the beak. So I usually go with obviously more of yellow, kind of combination of yellow and some orange for the darker areas of the beak. And I'm going to blend that a little bit. I was starting to say, so basically, you can use your fingers if you like to kind of blend. It's very messy. Oil pastels are pretty messy, which is probably why as a kid I didn't use them as much. I was one of those kids that did not like to get my hands dirty, which is pretty funny because I turned out to be an artist, and I pretty much, my hands are usually pretty um filled with some sort of art supply that I'm using during the day. So again, just starting to really layer the colors now, adding more green, but I'm going to now start adding some light blue right on the head here and a little bit into the body, using bold strokes. That's the really fun part, I think, about these basic oil pastels is they're chunky and a little bit difficult to get, you know, to hold them so much like a pencil. And it forces you to be a little looser in how you're creating, which is kind of fun. So in between, I like to kind of smooth a little bit out, but I'm now starting to really add the yellow to make it pop, and then adding other colors in between for the details. So for instance, I'm going back in here now that I'm getting quite a base for his body. And I'm adding some more details like the sort of U-shaped feathering. Add some blue down here where his feathers are. So basically building up that color, depending on how colorful or how many colors that you want to use. So this is definitely one of those projects. If you create art on a semi-regular basis, or even, just enjoy it with classes, there is what I call, you get into the zone where it's almost meditative, where you're just engrossed in what you're doing. And you'll find when you're finished, you should feel relaxed. And this is one of those projects that definitely helps with that. So I'm now going to start to really layer on the color, adding my oranges, or orange, I should say. Even going to add some different colored feathers underneath his chin. And also in his feathering under his belly. I really went to town with the different colors on this one. But again, if you want a more subtle bird, that's okay too. I did have somebody just send me theirs that was sort of newer to my classes Monday night. And they created a brown bird, and it was really nice the way it was executed. So these don't have to be crazy colorful if you don't want to. Subtle is good too. Just depends on, what you're feeling. I'm gonna add a little red now. What I like about oil pastels, to me, it's very much like a painting. It looks very painterly when you're done because of the layering, and the colors kind of sit on top of each other if you do them that way. Like, I mentioned before, if you want to blend, you can do that, but it's really kind of nice, the colors sitting on top of each other, and you're still able to see all of the colors in there. Really a lot of fun. So now I'm starting to get just a little bit darker, trying to create sort of my final colors, kind of final application on him. I still have to do his eye, and just adding some more feathering, some more outlining on his body here. I think I'll add a little more green in this one. Why not? And then for his eye, you can use a combination of black and brown or just black. And you probably want to leave a little bit of a highlight. So what that means is sort of a white space. I'm just going to kind of show this up close. His eye, probably you want to leave a little bit of a white space in order for it to not look so creepy. I definitely feel like my original, I know, I feel like he kind of looks creepy because I added some gray in the white area. And now that I look at it, I'm thinking, I don't know, he's a creepy bird. Maybe he's a Halloween bird. So, um, and again, kind of just finishing up the details even on the beak. Doing a little more blending. And oh, I forgot his feet, so I have to do that. Okay, so his feet, basically, I used some brown, a little bit of orange in order to create his feet here. You can add some black as well. I kind of mixed it all together. Just adding some finishing touches here to make it more vibrant. And then I'm going to cut them out. Okay. So I'm also just going to recheck here my paper, my background, make sure that it's still that it's drying. And I'm going to cut him out. And then what I want to do is, add some details to my background before I call it, finished. So where did I put my scissors? Ah, they're hiding under here. Here we go. Oh, let me make sure the bird is still in sight here in case anybody hasn't drawn the bird yet. Well, I'm at the part where I'm now cutting mine out. At this point, you can also cut out to make it look like maybe his feathers are kind of coming off of him a bit. You can make little cuts, like his feathers are kind of winging outward, like little sort of cuts like that if you want. I'm going to do that with this one. I didn't do it with my other one, but I talked about doing it and then forgot. You could also still, create that on your background if you want, since he's going to be glued to the background. All right, so now kind of looking where to position him. And I'm also just going to smooth him out a little more. Some of his colors I want to blend a little bit. All right, now I'm going to add him to this and then show you how to add some more details to your tree bark as far as like the texture. And if you want to add clouds, this is a good time to do so too, by using some of the white space of your text. You can also just, use actually, you could also use the other paper that you used to cut your bird out. You could do that too. So there's a few things you could do. And I think I'm going to make him a little bit lifted up. The last time for my example, I created him where he was lower in the tree, but I think I'm actually going to make him kind of pop up a little bit on this one. Going to be on this branch. Now, if you're having a hard time, sticking it down, you can take, because it's oily, you can take your other piece of scrap paper and kind of lay it on top of the bird and kind of massage it so that he sticks to the background. That's a little better. And just start some of these finishing touches here. So basically, we're now looking at the bark. I'm going to start to grab yellow, brown, black. You can even use a little bit of orange depending on what color you want your tree. So again, in my one that I created last night, or I'm sorry, Monday evening, I started adding lots of colors, browns and even yellow. I'm going to start off with the brown. And in the parts that are a little darker on the tree, I'm going to start adding the texture of the brown. You can also whiten up the brown if you want by using white on top of it, if you want to get a more subtle brown. And you can also mix it with yellow, which I might do a little bit of. But right now, I just want to kind of create some of the texture and kind of redefine those branches a little more. You can even add more subtle branches using the oil pastels. So that's kind of what I'm doing right now. Maybe make it go off a little bit here. And so in order to create that texture, I kind of go back and forth, rubbing it a little bit and then skipping space with the oil pastel and just kind of recreating the texture of bark. So I'm kind of skipping space here. And then you can also add some black to make parts a little bit darker. You can even create a little bit of a shadow behind his feet here on the tree. So this is where you can really have fun with the details. I'm definitely making this tree a lot darker than my other ones. But so I'm going to start to now add some yellow. Again, being a little bit looser. You add some white. To kind of smooth everything. And then here again, if you want to add some clouds, I'm going to go back and sort of start to add some clouds using, again, you can use the whites of your book, since my book is a little bit sort of yellowed, kind of like that. I'm going to kind of rip pieces to look cloud-like. This. And glue that down. I'm also thinking about, you know, if there's a cloud behind him, you know, it would be kind of little. Maybe kind of near him, like so. You can also lift him up slightly if you need to put, you know, a little bit of a cloud behind him. You can do that too, just by lifting him up very slightly. You can, you know, re-glue him as long as you don't rip. You know, you have to kind of be careful not to rip him as you do that. Pulling down some of these pieces. Cloud-like texture. Let's see. And then the other thing you can do, you know, if you want, you can go on top of your clouds using your white chalk pastel, or I'm sorry, oil pastel. You can create a little bit of some color on there to make it look cloud-like. I tend to use like a light blue and a white.
Yeah, I don't have the supplies, but I'm watching the lesson.
Oh, I'm so happy.
Lesson. She's a good artist. Look at this beautiful bird she drew.
Okay. Your hands will be very messy. Your spot will be messy where you've created. But hopefully you will enjoy your bird. And I'm curious if we're sort of ready to show our birds here. I'm going to remove some of my stuff so you can see. And I'm going to remove my spotlight. And if you are interested and are willing to share your work, would love to see it. Oh my goodness. That is gorgeous. I'm going to just stop the recording so that